I want to talk with you about your personal preferences, about your longings, and about holding your standard and experiencing yourself in alignment with what you truly want to experience. Standing up for yourself, no matter what. The other day, I did a podcast episode with Puneet. And Puneet and I, we talked about psychedelics, about plant medicine, and about that power within you to expand your consciousness, to expand your experience with yourself. That's what it is when we're expanding our consciousness, we're expanding the experience with ourselves. So we had that beautiful conversation. If you have not listened to it yet, go and check it out. He experienced psychedelics, and for him it was a beautiful opening into a completely different experience with himself and with life. And for him, that experience with psychedelics actually opened up his journey for expanding himself through meditation, through self-reflection, and so on. So for him, that was the beginning of his journey. He experienced that pure bliss, and he was like, I want to experience more of that, but I want to experience it from deep within me. There must be a way. So that was a little bit his story. My story was, I have not done any psychedelics, I think. I actually don't even know exactly what psychedelics are. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that I went on the journey. I had a very similar opening than he had. My opening was with the breath. My opening was with the breath and with meditation. So that was the first experience that I had several years ago in Bali, where I did that beautiful meditation, and I came out and I experienced two states. And that's important, but I will talk about that another time. But just for you to remember, I experienced two states, and one state was pain. It was anger. It was a lot of sadness that I experienced during that meditation. And the second part was bliss and ekstase and the orgasmic flowing through me. So there was that moment, again, the duality, but I'm going to talk about that another time. I'm not going to go into that right now. But I want you to remember that it's all, not just the bliss and the love and the ekstase. It is it all. I mean, it is love every time, every moment. But that's another thing. So for me then, I had that experience, and it was all created, that state created within me through my breath, and that's it. And I never ever experienced anything like that before. Never. It was just like, wow. And from that moment on, I knew I want more of that. Because the way I experienced my life so far was without that state. And I knew I want that. I want that to be my normal. So then I started that journey exploring myself through different modalities: the breath, the body, meditation, knowledge, understanding what's going on in the brain, understanding the quantum field, quantum physics, understanding epigenetics. So all that kind of stuff was part of my journey of exploring myself deeply. And at the beginning of my journey, that's what I shared as well, there was somehow somebody shared with me something about plant medicine. So there was that curiosity, like, what is it like to experience plant medicine and stuff like that. So I then listened to a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews where people actually experience plant medicine. I listened to a lot of stuff that Gabor Mate actually did, because he's a physician, a psychiatric doctor, I think even. So he has been working with his patients, supporting them with plant medicine. So then that was like somehow very fascinating to me. So I, over the years, like there was a period where I really listened a lot to it. I was like, that curiosity of like, just like experience it. Like, what is it like? What is it like? And then it was funny because I had two of my biggest teachers, or two of my most impactful teachers that I worked with was, or are, Dr. Joe Dispenza and Star Wolf. Star Wolf is my breathwork teacher. And both of them said it over and over again. You do not need any external substances to get into that state. You have everything within you to experience these states. You can activate DMT in your brain. You can activate states of bliss, of ekstase, with your breath, with meditation, and so on. So there was that part in me that was like, okay, so we don't actually need that. But then there was another part in me that was very curious about that. Like how is it actually? Is it really the truth that you don't need that? Years forward, there were periods of my time where I just like, explored it, like just by listening to other people experiencing it. So there was that curiosity involved. And then last year, and then I moved to Mexico. In Mexico, of course, you have a lot of like ceremonies, a lot of shamans offering all different kind of things. So there were certain moments where I had the possibility to actually do it, but then somehow it never really happened. So then last year, I did experience 2 plant medicine ceremonies. The first experience was an experience, I experienced ayahuasca, and I really felt called to do it. It was not just something that like, okay, there was like that calling, and that calling I followed. So that's something that I really want to remind you of. Whatever it is that you're trying to not do it because you think you have to do it now, it's part of that, like really follow that inner calling. And you just know there's a difference between you telling yourself you have to do it now and you really following that calling. So I followed that calling. And I did the beginning of the year. Last year, I experienced an ayahuasca ceremony. And then mid of last year, at one point, I experienced a peyote ceremony. So I shared all that experience. I won't go into depth right now with that, but I shared more about, or both of us shared about our experiences, expanding our consciousness, expanding ourselves, expanding the experience with ourselves in that episode. So if that's something you're curious about, Puneet also shared about his experience at Burning Man, which was pretty cool to listen to. So it's like a whole journey. So I would love you to experience that. So you could just go and check it out. And then that whole conversation, we actually wanted to have that conversation 1 week before. But then somehow it did not happen. But that whole conversation really activated something within me. And I had a conversation with my mother about that, and that we wanted to, have this conversation, but then it did not happen. And then somehow it brought up like a lot of like resistance and anger within her, because she has experienced my brother being she has been supporting my brother very, very powerfully and lovingly through his psychotic experiences. So there's a lot of like pain, like related to that still somehow. And so that was then the first experience, the way she saw it. It's like, okay, it's just all external substances and it's just all bad. So that was very interesting. And anyway, that whole opening was that moment, you know, we had that conversation, everything kind of like you know, that those memories, those moments, like when those moments where there was big despair, big panic of like the fear of losing my brother and stuff like that, it was kind of coming up. But then at the same time it stirred something up, and that stirring over the next days transformed into the most beautiful experience of us actually connecting in a way we haven't connected with one another for a long time. Again, that's actually not what I wanted to share, but I just want to remind you the duality of it, like the grumbling, things falling apart, things being stirred up, and then at the same time, when you allow yourself to surrender to it, to experience it, to let it be what it is, to not wanting to fix it, to control it, the unfolding of magic, of connection, of love. So that was already like, it was so beautiful, like that whole activation that I experienced in that way. And then we had the conversation, Puneet and I, a week after, and after that something got stirred up in me, and I want to share that with you because I know it has been a very powerful activation for myself, and I know that it's something very powerful for you too. We had that conversation, beautiful deep dive, and I shared about my experiences, my personal experiences with the plant medicine. And he shared his experiences with psychedelics. So the experiences that he shared were very blissful. You know, for him it was like that opening and like love and bliss and for me the experience with the plant medicine, it was kind of like there was some resistance there within me, because some part of me knew, like, you don't need that to get into these elevated or into these higher states. I have the power within me to do that. So that was like one part of me that knew that. And then the other part of me was just, yeah, I don't know, resisting like the experience. For example, the idea that I need to vomit, the idea that I need to, you know, that it's just coming out everywhere. I was like, I don't want that experience. So I kind of like already set a frame for the experience. Anyway, I think we're always getting what we are capable of, not capable, what we need in that very moment. And of course also what we're capable to be with. So then my first experience, and the interesting thing was I was not really sharing much about the experience itself. I was sharing more about the setting. And I had two very, very random experiences around that whole ceremony. So the first one was, it was a friend of mine who has been to Colombia, to the jungle for a long time, and with a friend of his, and then they were here in Germany for a little bit. They hosted a ceremony. The Tahiti, I think that's how he's called, like the guy from the jungle in Colombia. We did like a FaceTime call. He was with us energetically, holding space. And so then when I got there it was like a home, you know, and the home really, I did not like the environment. So the environment for me, it was not very inviting. Like the idea that I had was like a sacred space, a safe space. So I got there and people were just smoking cigarettes in the room. I'm like, that is not very sacred for me. And I want to say that I also smoked cigarettes, but somehow in that setting, it did not fit for me personally. And then the whole room, it was just like, there was just not the vibe that I wanted to experience, having that experience. And then I told my friend, you know, I'm gonna leave, like, I just don't feel it. And he was like, yeah, that's the resistance, you know, right before we're doing it, right before we're experiencing, it's the resistance, you know, it's just normal. I had that too. And then I was like, I'm gonna leave anyway, I don't care. And then at one point it was like, just stay. So then I followed that calling and I stayed. So then I had that experience, and that experience, it was very funny, because the first part of that experience that I had was like the room that I was in, it actually started changing. All by a sudden, I just saw like that cabin that I was in, like somewhere in the mountains. It was like, wow, beautiful. That's so beautiful that I'm here. And then it shifted towards like a beach home somewhere, and I was at the beach. It was just all beautiful. So that was a very powerful and profound experience, to actually have the power to shift where I am right now, to not make it anymore about the setting that I don't like, but really experience the setting in my own beauty, the way I want to experience it anyway. So that was while, of course, or after I had the medicine. So then I did not really share much about my experience in that conversation. I mean, I did share about the experience, but I shared more about was like the experience around that ceremony. So then when I came out, when we all came out, when we came back the next morning, it was beautiful. The music was playing, there was a fireplace, and we were hugging each other, loving each other and everything, and gratitude and love and expansion and connection. But then all by a sudden, they started smoking cigarettes, like right there. And that did not feel right for me. That just did not feel right. And yes, we can reason it, of course, loving it all, being one with everything. And yes, and that's actually what I want to share with you. You can be in love. You can love someone, but you can still set your boundaries. And I think this is the important point that we often forget. The boundary, the preference that you actually have, the longing for knowing what it is that you actually want. And this is what I experienced in that exact moment. Like, it is not what I want. When I am in a sacred setting, when I'm in a ceremony, there are no other external substances needed. That's the way I see it. And that's the way I want to experience it. No other way. But it's funny. That's exactly the way I experienced it, though. And that's okay as well. Because very often when we are very clear about what it is that we want, the desire, the longing, the standards, what's often happening, what I shared before, twice, the duality. That you're not getting immediately what you want, you first might get actually the complete opposite. So then it's about you holding yourself in that power. And that holding yourself in that power takes on many different ways. But the most powerful way that I experience is that I discovered being with it. When there is the pain, when there is the discomfort, it's okay. Be with it. Feel it. Feel it and own it. Own your more. Own your standards. Own your preference. There is nothing wrong with you having a preference. I want you to own all your preference. I want you to experience it the way you are longing to experience it, whatever it is that you want to experience. So then I had another, and it's kind of funny. My second experience. I got invited to a peyote ceremony, And I was very curious. I met that curandero, that older man in Cozumel, who's also like a healer, and I connected with him through Paco, and Paco, he knows him from his work, so we connected, and I was like, yeah, I really feel it. And then he invited me to join him for a ceremony, a peyote ceremony. So then I did that a few weeks after, and we met. And it's funny because again, it wasn't about the experience, like the experience that I shared in that conversation with Puneet. It wasn't about that experience during it, a little bit about it, but it was about something else. So when we got there, we met at the ferry. We were about to leave, him and I. And then he was like, we have to wait, another friend of mine is coming. And that friend came, and that friend was somehow, I think, smoked a joint before. So she was a little bit like, a little bit high, a little bit like, and I was like, that is a weird energy. Like, to go on a ceremony, that just doesn't fit again. It's just not sacred to me. Anyway, I chose. I was actually there again. There was like that moment of doubt. Should I actually stay? Because it's just doesn't feel right to actually combine those two things. And I decided to go. So then we got to Playa del Carmen. We arrived on the mainland, and then there are, police, military checking people if they're taking anything, with the dogs, and she got dog sniffed something, and they took her out, and I was like, whew, that's nice. It would be nice if she just can't go with us and we just go by ourselves, because I really did not like to be in that energy. And I said that in that podcast episode, and I was like, oh my God. After we finished the conversation, I was like, I am horrible. Like, how can I say something like that I wish that she would just have stayed there, and we're going without her. And then I was like, I was actually not sure if I should publish that podcast episode, because it's like, not that nice, not that loving, not that conscious, oneness, love. But then on the other hand, I'm like, it actually is. So I just gonna share about it. And I noticed like the judgment towards myself that I experienced, and there again, I want to highlight it, because it was actually, of course it's not about her. Of course it's not about her. It's about the vibe that is connected, the energy that is connected to her, which was like the marijuana, which I do not like. And again, that's my preference. And I have the choice every moment to step away from that. But I chose to not step away from it. And that's okay as well. Sometimes we just don't act based on what it is that matters the most, because that curiosity, that interest of experiencing the peyote ceremony was stronger. And it was perfection. It always is perfection. You always get what you need. So then we went to that peyote ceremony in Playa del Carmen, in the middle of the jungle, not in Playa del Carmen, in Puerto Aventuras, which is like between Playa del Carmen and Cancun, somewhere in the middle of the jungle. Like a group of people are meeting there. They all know each other. It's like a community who have been like a group of people who are doing that for many, many years together. And the shamans, they live somewhere in the mountains. They came you know. So I was very excited to experience that. So then we got there, and it was like this incredibly beautiful place. It was in the jungle. There were just candles like guiding the path, and then there was a huge fire, and I was like in the middle of the jungle. It was just pure magic. I'm like, wow. Wow, beautiful. People gathering around the fire. They were making music, they were singing, it was just like, yeah, like that's the vibe that I want to experience. I love that. So then there was the experience, there was the ceremony going on the entire night, and then the next, and it was very magical. Was very magical, like connecting deeper with oneness, with nature, with the fire, with the jungle, like the sounds. It was just all very profound and deep and beautiful, and connecting deeper with one another, like that what I felt before, you know, like that feeling of not wanting to be with her, it kind of dissolved. And I mean, that was beautiful. That was really beautiful. So then we, you know, slowly coming back and waking up. The sun is coming up. Pure magic, honestly, pure magic. And also the shamans, they were dressed very traditionally in their dresses. So, and he held a talk that was very magical, and his presence, I really loved it. So then the next day, we slowly, you know, we came back, more talking, more love, more connection, and all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. But then they started to, you know, like, okay, we're gonna organize some food now, hang out there, and we're gonna celebrate. It was somebody's birthday, so they wanted to celebrate. So they went and bought beer. Like tons of beer. And I was like, that doesn't fit. It's just not fitting. Like, we just had that sacred moment with love and connection, and, you know, like experiencing that power within us, of course, also through a substance. But there was that sacredness. And for me, somehow, beer is not sacred at all. I don't know. It's just like there's no sacredness in that. So then I was there, in the middle of it, not wanting to be there, trying to get out of it. But I couldn't. I couldn't. And I was like, because it was in the middle of the jungle, I didn't have service. We needed a car. I was trying to get a car. I was trying to get someone who drives me. No one actually was doing it. And I was just there, you know, like a little child. Like, I wanna go. I just wanna go. I just wanna integrate that differently than with beer. That's just like, you know, people were having fun, and I could just have fun myself as well. I don't like beer. I don't like being surrounded by people drinking beer. So of course, I can just stay in that feeling of love, connection, loving them, loving myself, loving what is. But I did not. I did not. Because I did not want that. And that's completely okay. And I want you to get away from the idea that you have to love everything. Love means as well for yourself that you hold on to your standards, that you're holding on to what it is that you want. That you give yourself the permission to experience your preferences. And that is not my preference. I don't like to be surrounded by people who are drinking. In general, I just don't like it. Once in a while, okay. Rather, in a long while. I just don't like it. It's just not like, there's just like, the consciousness is shifting with these substances. And I don't like that kind of consciousness. I just don't like it. Am I sometimes surrounded by people who are drinking? Yes. Am I sometimes drinking as well? Yes. But that's just my preference, and that is perfect. So then when we had the conversation, when Puneet and I the other day, I talked about judgment. I thought that because I was like, that is just divinely orchestrated. You know, it's just so weird that it happens twice. Like the one time with the cigarettes where I'm like, that's weird. That's just not what I want. And then the second time with the beer, which is also like not what I want. So I was like, you know, it was just like divinely orchestrated. Like it was like this, like God comedy. It was just like, what the heck is going on here? There's something going on that I could not grasp yet. So then when I was talking to Puneet, I actually realized that, or the way I shared it, I was like, you know, like that judgment that I had, that I was able to turn into compassion. And then I was like, after that conversation, I was like, it's not really judgment, because I'm not really judgmental. I mean, like I am judgmental at times, yes, it's there, but like in that situation, I wasn't. It was just like, and it wasn't about compassion, because you know, people, that's part of my journey. That has been part of my journey, and that's a big part of my teaching, you know, like letting everybody experience themselves in the way they want them to be experienced, in the way they want to experience themselves. But then what was it about? It wasn't about the judgment that I thought it was about, that I had, because there was actually no judgment. And the compassion, I'd say I experienced a lot of shit that really guided me back into my heart to love myself and to love others, like no matter what. I experienced a lot of the duality, a lot of the polarities. Love it all. So no, it wasn't really about the judgment. It wasn't really about the compassion, because that was there. What was it about then? So I opened up for it. I went, like, you know, after that conversation, I went for a walk, and then the next morning I woke up and I just opened up. I did not think about it or anything. I just opened up, like, so then what was it about? Like, what's the teaching behind that, or what is it that I'm not getting? And so then what I got was actually the preference and the standard, and not giving myself the permission to actually stand up, own, claim what I truly want. So I put myself in a situation where I actually judged myself, where I did not give myself the permission to just have that preference. And my preference is to not be in these kind of situations. That's my preference. So then what happened was, I was resisting that I was in that kind of situation. But the truth was, and then I was again kind of like blaming myself that I have that preference, that I can't just be in love with everything. And that's the teaching here that I want to share with you. You don't have to be in love with everything. Please stop that. Stop that. You can be in love with everything. You can have a loving perspective towards everything and everybody, yes. But I want you to stand up for your preferences. I want you to hold, to claim your preferences, that which you prefer. And my preference is a sacred space. My preference is beauty. My preference is magic. My preference is a safe setting. My preference is no substances. That's my preference. And I noticed that I did not claim that. But not only there in these two settings, actually in general in my life the last year, did not really claim that. my preferences. I can be in love, yes, and I want you to be in love, but I did not really claim that. My preferences of magic, of beauty, of the sacredness. So then what I did was, I was actually not honoring myself. And that has actually been now the full circle. The full circle moment. Where it's not really about, the ceremonies, where it's not really about the setting of the ceremonies. It's about remembering that I am setting my standards, that I am claiming my preferences, that I am standing up for what I truly want. And does it always come in the way that I want it, that I imagine it, that I expect it to come? No! Look at this, how it showed up. Completely against what I want. The complete opposite. And that's what happens often. That the complete opposite is showing up. And I want you to be with it. I want you to be with it, because this is where you're shifting your energetic signature. Stop resisting it. I mean, you can resist it by wanting it to be away. But resisting it means you're keeping it alive. You're giving it your energy. So what you gotta do is you just gotta be with it when you notice it. And often we cannot notice it by ourselves. And that's why the work with a mentor is so powerful. Because your mentor can reflect it back at you. Those things that you don't see. And I could not see it. I mean, I could see it now. And the perfect moment, like there are other pieces that are just coming together magically. And I'm like, wow. So somehow, yeah, I got there. But it took a little while to get there. And it's okay. It's just what it is that you want. I want you, nothing more than that, to go for your desires, to own your desires, to claim your longings, to stand up for that which you truly want, to stop making compromises, and to give yourself the allowance to have it all. The connections, the relationships, the partnership, the money, the experiences, the family, the luxury experiences. I don't know what it is that you want. I don't know. You're the only one who knows. I'm here to open you up for it, to really claim it. That's what I'm here for. But you're the one who chooses, who knows deep within you what you truly want. And I want you to claim it, to stop settling for less, and to claim it all in any area of your life. Claiming it all, claiming you,